So the subject matter I'm going to talk about today is the identity of Gog of the land of Magog. I'm also going to talk about other things besides that to lay the foundation for discussing who Gog from the land of Magog really is. Those who've been listening to my videos, you can see that I've been able to identify the house of Togarmah and Turkey's, the Turkic people's involvement or being related to them. Today, Gog of the land of Magog. So what I'm going to do first is go to an article. Now, before I get started, disclaimers. I'm going to do plenty of disclaimers today because so many things are not as they should be. So the way people think is simply not the way it should be. As most of you should know by now, the name of Christ is in reference to a pagan Greek god, Sybil. That was the first time Christos was a label for a false god. Jesus is also in reference to a false god. It's reference to one of the sons of Zeus from one of his wives, Electra, but it is also in reference to Zeus in other ways as the animal of choice of sacrifice of the Greeks or of the pagan Roman, Greek, etc. But I've gone over that many times. You can go and look at my videos and you can find those things. So disclaimer here, and when I start reading this off, I will point out where I disagree with her. All right, Magog, which means covering, roof, or dissolving, as listed in the second of the 7 sons of Japheth or Japheth by the Bible. His people dwelt in the north. All of its combatants were horsemen, equipped with a bow as their weapon. He was a direct ancestor of the Magogites. Their name was identified with terror and brutality in the east. Magogites was a nation of people identified as Scythians, not or Tartars, and Tartars by the Greeks later on. Other tribes such as the Slavs, the Mongols. Now what she doesn't understand concerning the Mongols origins are a little obscure, but when the Mongols invaded Russia and even as far as Eastern Europe, the Scythians, aka the Russians, or the Scythians that remained, did not move to the west, had intermingled their seed with the Mongols. So she's part right and part wrong in this. Okay, the Finns, the Hungarians, or the Magyars, and Paramis are said to have come from him. All the Goths, including Swedes, declared that they too descended from the Magogites, and that is true. Even the Swedish queen claims to be the 200 and whatever ruler, or not ruler, but her generation is that many generations from ancient Gog. Irish Celts also claim that they are the descendants of Japheth through Magog, although others suggest they are the descendants of Gomer. Yeah, through Riphath, okay, because Riphath was the son of Gomer. It could be both. All right. Scythia was a nation that used to be at the north of the Black Sea, in the middle of the Caucasus and Mesopotamia, from the years 630 to 600 BC. That is important to note because Ezekiel, he died at around, let's see, 622. No, he was born at 622. He died at around 570. All right? So we've got real close-up time frames going on here. All right. So between, let me try to see if I can memorize this, between 570 and 622, the days of Ezekiel. All right, 570 to 622. Now, so at the time of the latter part of the years of Ezekiel the prophet, the Scythians, were in at the north of the Black Sea, in the middle of the Caucasus and Mesopotamia. And of course, Georgia means Gog, as I have mentioned so many times before. But are the Georgians the only people of Gog? Absolutely not. They spread out far and wide. And the book of Revelations points this out. They were known to be for their bow and for their battling mainly on horseback, the two qualities also seen by early Magogites. Scythians were identified as merciless people, awfully brutal and barbaric to the nations they invaded. All right, I'm going to see if I can find some images here. As you can see, right here in this image, this area right here is Crimea, and this was where the Scythians were, and also in this area right here, this right here where I have my marker at, is where Tbilisi, Georgia is today, right here. All right. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Now, how do I get out of here? All right. I just, all right. So the map is very helpful. This was during the Persian Empire, okay? So after Ezekiel died, the Scythians, well, they started moving a little bit, okay? They started going down, and also we find that they went into this area for a while, but they were kicked out, as she points out. In the succeeding history about the Ashkenaz, the people closely recognized as the ancestors of the Scythians, well, the Scythians, how do I say this, were a conglomeration of Ashkenaz, Gomer, and Gog, Magog, and all that before things started splitting up. It's stated that the Magogites were just a portion of the Scythian nation who were also mixed with the Ashkenaz tribe. For Ashkenaz, just so you folks understand, is much of Western Europe today, and quite a bit in Eastern Europe too. Magogites were long exiled and replaced by other groups of people in the prehistoric land of Scythia. This tribe has now been traced and is seen to have traveled around the world. That is accurate. It's you can see it in I'll go to Revelation. You see in Ezekiel, it says Gog from the land of Gog, or their original land. But you see here, in this particular instance, after the 1,000 years are over, let's see here. And when the 1,000 years are expired, verse 7, Satan will be loosed out of his prison, and he will go out to deceive the nations, or the Gentiles, that are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, a number of whom is the sand of the sea. So, in Ezekiel, it mentions from the land of Magog, but in this instance right here, it talks about them being in the four quarters of the earth, spread out. Well, they spread out a long time ago. All right? The tribe has now been traced and is seen to have traveled around the world. Ezekiel describes Gog from Magog as a figure of evil darkness from the north and the enemies of... Now, here comes another disclaimer. I want to point out how badly Christians have erred. The name God comes from the Goths, right? Let's see if I can do this without taking up too much time. Wait a minute, right here. All right, the Gothic religious practices. The word God itself is a cognate from the Gothic word guth for a pagan idol, presumably a wooden statue of the kind by the Wingeric on a chariot where he challenged the Gothic Christians to worship the tribal gods, executing them after they refused. So, now, preface this by saying I am not a Christian. Why am I not a Christian? Because Christians after 325 practiced the same things that the pagans did to them. They did it to the Jews, the Christians did, and to others. They did exactly what the pagans did to them. And then, if that wasn't enough, they took the name of pagan gods and made them their own. No, I shall not have any part of that. Therefore, I am not a Christian. Period. Now, I'm going to read it again. The word God itself is cognate of the Gothic word guth for a pagan idol, presumably a wooden statue of the kind paraded by Wingeric on a chariot when he challenged the Gothic Christians to worship the tribal gods, executing them after they refused. It became the word for the Christian God in the Gothic Bible. Your Bible, in the King James Bible. In every Bible almost every Bible you see around the world, with a few exceptions, changing its grammatical gender from neuter to masculine in this new sense only. I don't know what she meant by that, so pardon me if I don't disclaimer myself here again. I just don't know what she means by that. The name of the Goths themselves is presumably related to those who libate, while Guth, idol, is the name. The name Guth literally means an idol, or God literally means an idol, is the object of the act of libation. The words for to sacrifice and for sacrificer were biotan and biostraeus, used in biblical Gothic and in the sense of Christian worship and the Christian priest. One peculiarity which separates the Gothic pagan period from all other forms of Germanic paganism is the absence of weapons as grave goods. Now, I think I don't need to talk about any more here. I think you've got enough information. All right, I don't need this anymore. So I'll continue reading this amazing BibleTimeline.com. Ezekiel described Gog from Magog as a figure of evil darkness from the north as enemies. Do you see? You see what I mean? You see what I mean, folks? Now, you might say, well, what does Gog and Magog have to do with the Goths? Folks, you're going to find out in a few minutes. As she puts it, whereas in Revelation it was written that Gog and Magog were two nations that allied together to destroy, as she puts it, Christos, but it's Israel's Messiah and his people Israel in the final battle. So the Jews also changed the phrase Gog from Magog to Gog and Magog, the two great opponents of Jehovah, it should say, not God. See, what they have done is they have reduced in a blasphemous way our Father in heaven to a wooden idol that should be wiped out in the final battle. All right, so we'll go to the place of Magog. People of Magog, or the Magogites, were said to be a great powerful nation that lived in the extreme recesses of the north. Historians state that the people of Magog were with the Greeks called Scythians. Okay? Now, the Scythians dwelt in the north of the Black Sea and the Caucasus Mountains, an area now belonging to Russia. And I just pointed this out on that map just a minute ago. All right? Now, the Magogites were forced out of Anatolia because they went south and they invaded Anatolia. But they were forced out of Anatolia in 574. When was Ezekiel born? Ezekiel was born at 570. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I keep messing this up. Ezekiel was born in 622. His words, the last dated words of Ezekiel, date to April 570. So they were kicked out of the land they invaded, which was Anatolia, in 574, which would mean it would put them back in their old lands. Okay? It would put them back into their old lands in the north of the Caucasus. Now, while in the Middle East they moved towards Central Asia to the land of the ancient Mongols, yes, that the reason why the Mongols are of lighter skin was because these people mixed with the Mongols, or As the further north you go, the lighter the skin. They're mixed. The term Mongol is thought to have derived from the name Magog. I don't think so. No, that's a stretch. Now, so now I need to do a little, you can see right there, Tbilisi. I don't need this map here, but what I want to do is Scythians. We're going to do another map of the Scythians. And don't forget, the Scythians were Ashkenaz, some of Gomer. Gomer, Ashkenaz did come from Gomer. It's a conglomeration of Japhetic people. Okay, so when you see this map, you need to understand this, right? And this is during the days of the Roman Empire. And so, and of course the Romans were also of the sons of Japheth as well. And what you see here is Germany right here. And the Scythians, they spread all over the place, to the four corners of the earth, just exactly as the Bible says. Gog was among them. The land of Gog was right here, where now is basically Russia proper today. But as you can see, they, as a group of Scythians, with the Scythians, are around the world now. Now, let's see if I can find. Don't need that anymore. Don't need that anymore. I do want to mention this real quick. Daniel 5. So you now know, folks, that the English-speaking people, the German-speaking people, much of the people of Europe now refer to their deity as the god of the Scythians, the god of the Goths, all right? God of wood. Let's see what let's see what Daniel has to say about this. Daniel 5:23. All right, we'll start in verse 13. And then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king spoke and said, Daniel, are you that Daniel who is one of the captives from Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard of you, and that the spirit of Jehovah is in you, not God. See what they have done, folks? Please understand the significance of this. It exposes who Gog and Magog is in the end. All right. And that the light and understanding and the excellent wisdom are found in you. Now that the wise men and the astrologers have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known to me its interpretation. I find it very interesting that the reason why they did not understand it, because it was Hebrew. All right. But they could not give the interpretation of this thing, and I have heard of you that you can give interpretation and explain enigmas. And now you can read the writing and make it known to me in the interpretation, and you shall be clothed with purple and a chain of gold around your neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. If Daniel would have accepted that post, he probably would have been killed. Daniel then answered and said, before the king, let your gifts be for yourself, and give your rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation. O king, the Most High Elohim, not God, gave Nebuchadnezzar your father a kingdom and a majesty and glory and honor. And because of the majesty that he gave him, all the people and nations and languages trembled and feared before him. Whomsoever he wished, he executed. Moreover, he wished, he kept alive. Whomever he wished, he set up, and whomever he wished, he put down. And when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened in pride, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him, or his glory was taken from him. And he was driven from the sons of men. His heart was made like the beast, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. And he was fed grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until he knew that the Most High Elohim, not God, Elohim, rules in the kingdom of men and appoints over it whomsoever he chooses. But you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, although you knew about this. He knew. Today, the Christians know as well what I'm talking about. And you have lifted up yourself against the master of the heavens. They have brought the vessels of his house before you and your lords, your wives and your concubines have drunk wine from them. And you have praised the gods of silver and gold, bronze and iron, wood and stone. What was Belshazzar the king of again? Oh, that's right, Babylon. What is the plague? The plagues of the book of Revelation going to be poured out upon? Figurative Babylon, aka Rome. The people who worship idols of gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. What is the Gothic idol? An idol of wood, which do not hear or see or know, and Elohim, who holds your breath in his hands and owns all your ways, you have not glorified. Then the finger of the hand was sent from him, and this writing was written. And in this, the inscription that was written, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. All right. Upharsin? Well, those of us who are familiar with languages, this is the thing that really gets me. Those of you who know Hebrew, you know what this means. Why didn't he know? Is it because they didn't care to learn Hebrew? None of the astrologers, none of the king's men? All right. He interpreted, this was easy for him. He interpreted from his own language. The interpretation of each word, meaning, numbered. Let's look it up, shall we? A measure of weight. All right. This is the writing that was written, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation, the thing. Mene, Jehovah has, or Elah has numbered your kingdom and finished it. It's the end. So just like ancient Babylon, in a way, The kingdom was measured and it is finished. Tekel. What does it mean? It says you are weighed in the balances and are found wanting. Okay, tekel. Let's see what it says here. To weigh. There it is, right there. All right. Perez or Upharsin. We all know the word Farsi, where it comes from. Persia. To divide. The kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Okay. So today, that's not what's going to happen. Today, the kingdom is going to be given back to, or in the time of the end, the kingdom is going to be given back to Jerusalem. But you see what happened here. You see what Daniel pointed out to the king of Babylon. So let's go back once again and look at this. Well, I've already shown you this. Okay, the Goths then were an early Germanic people, two of whose branches, the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths, played an important role in the fall of the Western Roman Empire and the emergence of medieval Europe. Now, they did not originate from southern Sweden, but I'll go ahead and read some of this, and then I will go to other parts, other sources. All right. Possibly originating southern Sweden, as they say, the Goths are mentioned by Roman authors as living in the Vistula Basin in northern Poland at the 1st century. During the subsequent centuries, the Goths expanded toward the Black Sea. So they were going back and forth, is what was happening. As you could see, back in the 500-600s BCE, they were traversing back and forth between Anatolia and their original homeland, southern Russia today, where they replaced the Sarmatians as the dominant power in the Pontic steppe and launched a series of expeditions against the Roman Empire as far as Cyprus. During this time, the Goths became divided into two major factions, the Thervingi and Girathungi. All right. See what's going on here? You can see the map. This is how they were divided. Who were led by the Balti dynasty and the Amali dynasty, respectively, in the 300s. Menacheric, king of Girathungi, said to have dominated a vast territory stretching from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea as far as the Ural Mountains. During this time, many of the Goths were converted to Arianism. Now, Arianism was a doctrine of Christianity that did not agree with Constantine before the what do you call that? The Council of Nicaea, but afterward, these people were the ones who did the most damage against the Jews. The non-Trinitarian Christians. After the Council of Nicaea, they did join up with the Trinitarians and were among the worst of the persecutors. All right, by the missionary Euphilus, who devised a Gothic alphabet to write the Gothic Bible. In the 370s, territories of the Goths were overrun by the Huns. All right. While the Gruithungi became subjects of the Huns, later being known as the Ostrogoths. Many of the Thervingi, later known as Visigoths, crossed the Danube into the Roman Empire, where they, after suffering severe treatment, ignited a wide-scale rebellion and inflicted a massive defeat upon the Romans at the Battle of Adrianople in 378. Under their leader, Alaric I, the Visigoths embarked on a long migration within the Roman Empire, notably sacking Rome in 410 and eventually settling in Gaul and Hispania. All right? So now we're talking French and France and Spain. Not so much in the western part, but the vast majority of Spain, where they founded the Visigothic kingdom. The Visigoths fought together with the Western Roman Empire against the Huns of Attila and allied Ostrogoths at the Battle of the Catalanian Plains in 451 AD, in which the Huns were defeated. The Ostrogoths broke free from the Hunnic control soon afterwards and eventually migrated to Italy in the late 5th century under their king Theodoric, where they founded the Ostrogothic kingdom. Okay, but so it's not what I was looking for. Come on. All right. Now, all right. Magog is associated with apocalyptic traditions, mainly in connection with Ezekiel 38 and 39, which mentions Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, or Rosh, prince of Meshech and Tubal. Ezekiel 38:2. On the basis of this mention, Gog and Magog over time became associated with each other as a pair. Well, see, no. Because if they would have read the Revelation 20 properly, here's what it says. Let's see here. Gog and Magog, okay. He shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth. They have spread out. So it's no longer Gog of the land of Magog, but Gog and all of Magog. You see, there is a difference. They were scattered over the four quarters of the earth, and as I have pointed out in the maps, you can see that is the case. Now let's go back to this. And this will also prove that point. In the New Testament, they say this pairing. It's not a pairing. They just misinterpreted. It's found in the book of Revelation 20, verse 8, in which instance they may merely be metaphors. They're not metaphors, folks. It's literal. Josephus refers to Magog, son of Japheth, as progenitor of the Scythians. We just went over that. Did we not? Who are the Scythians? Or peoples of the Black Sea, north of the Black Sea. According to him, the Greeks called Scythia Magogia. Now you begin to understand. Magogia is the place where the Scythians were. Right? We'll go back to the map. No, not that. Bible Hub. All right, during the Roman Empire, what do you see? Right here. Ukraine is right here. And in fact, you're already going into Eastern Europe. This is during the time of the old Roman Empire, but they've spread out since then. But this is the land of Gog right here. The land of the Scythians. All right. The land of Magog, I should say. All right. So, so this is Josephus. And also, the Greeks agreed with Josephus. Now, the Greeks in those days, they were well-educated people, put it that way. An alternative identification derived from an examination of the order in which the tribal names are listed in Ezekiel 38 would place Magog between Cappadocia and Media. According to Rabbi Shlomo Gansfried, the 19th century, Magog refers to the Mongols. Well, he's wrong. Because the Mongols are way, 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 way to the east. He cites an Arab writer who refers to the Great Wall of China with Magog. Well, I would say that the Greeks were probably more knowledgeable than the Arabs in those days. We'll put it to you like that. Josephus refers to Magog, son of Japheth, as a progenitor of Scythians, or people of the north of the Black Sea. Okay, I was just there. Jordanes Gadika mentions Magog as ancestor of the Goths. Yes, folks, also the Goths. As does Historia Britannicum, or the history of the Britons, history of the indigenous British people. That was written around 828 and survives numerous recensions that date from after the 11th century. Okay? Johannes Magnus, 1488 to 1544, states that Magog migrated to, or should be some of Magog, migrated to Scandinavia via Finland. 88 years after the flood, and that his 5 sons were Sueno, ancestor of the Swedes, Gether or Gog, ancestor of the Goths. But I will stick with what Josephus said. I think he and the Greeks are more accurate. Now, that does not mean, folks, that none of this was true. It doesn't mean that some of these Scythians, 88 years after the flood, didn't go up into those lands. All right? You can't sit here and say the whole group of them went up there. That's just not true. This is what I'm getting at. Now, Magnus' accounts have been accepted by the Swedish court for a long time. He even calls the dynastic numerals of the Swedish monarchs to be renumbered. Accordingly, Queen Christina of Sweden reckoned herself as number 249 in a list of kings going back to Magog. Magnus also influenced several later historic. Okay, I think I've done enough here. My point is, folks, it's not hard to. I'm going to go point out where the Scythians traveled now. Okay. All right. Where? Okay, this map should show you something. As we saw before, the Goths, aka Scythians, this is where they are located, or where they migrated to. As you can see in northern Spain, not on the west part, not Portugal, but northern Spain, France, and they eventually came down further into Italy. But this is Celts and Scythians freely interacted through trading and travel networks reaching from the Caspian Sea to the Atlantic Ocean. All right. So you can read this, but you can plainly see now that the land of Magog was right here and right in here. That's their original lands, but they have spread out basically to the four corners of the earth. They spread out into Italy and even into later on into southern Africa, and even in some. So that's the reason why it says to the four corners of the earth eventually. Not only that, even across the Atlantic Ocean in the United States. What is the God that they worship? What his name is God. When you go Sunday church services and every single house of worship, what do you see? You see an idol made of wood, and they call him God. Yes, folks. Who is Gog and Magog today, then? Well, I'm going to let you, the listener, figure that out. Now, I'm going to go back to Ezekiel 38. It's very important to understand what's going on around us today. It's kind of hard to, the past a week or two, I've been discussing what's been going on in the Middle East and Euphrates River, Syria. And so now that the people who worship idols of stone and gold and wood and all that, and they call this Jesus, they call it God. And it was the idol of the Goths or the Scythians or the Magogites. Let's look at Ezekiel 38 in that context. And the word of Jehovah, not the Lord, Jehovah, came unto me, saying, Son of man, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog, Rosh, prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him and say, Thus saith Adonai Jehovah, I am against you, Gog, Rosh, prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will cause you to return. Put hooks in your jaws and will bring you forth, you and all your army. And it says horses, as I pointed out before. In ancient Hebrew, this meant birds. In this case, it would be birds of weaponry. Military weaponry. All right? And charioteers. A stretch out of a vehicle, not single or mounted. So these are vehicles. A charioteer. All right? And even right here it points out that Gog is Scythian. Folks, Persia, and we know who that is. Kush. It can be either Africa Kush or Hindu Kush. North Africa. All of them with shield and helmet. Gomer. Well, the people of Gomer, you got Ashkenaz, you've got House of Togarmah, which is in Turkey today, and it mentions House of Togarmah, Turkey, of the north part, and all his bands and many people with. Okay, so what are they going to do? What's the point? What's the point here, folks? Here's the point. Verse 12. To rape and pillage. To take a spoil and take a prey. To turn your hand upon the desolate places. What's going on in Syria right now? I told you that I was going to do some, what do you call that, disclaimers. Well, I read a lot of websites, some of them from people who I completely disagree with, who they are my enemy. Okay. There are several. There is Press TV. There is Pravda, Moscow Times, South Front, which they're all backed up by, like, for instance, I believe, was it Press TV? I think it's Iranian. Okay. So what I did, and then there's Hal Turner. Now, Hal Turner, he loves to go to those particular websites to get what he calls the truth from. This is the reason why I have to mention this disclaimer. So I'm going to go to, and what I usually do when I go to Hal Turner's website and I see something like this, where is this? When I see something like this, I'll show you what I do. Okay. So the headline is U.S. stealing $30 million plus per month in Syrian oil, tax-free, cash to Swiss bank accounts of CIA contractors and generals. So I think, if I remember, what I did was this. I may have been in red. Okay, let me try this. All right, so what I did was, as I searched Google for this, and what did I find? He got it from Press TV. Press TV is an Iranian propaganda news organization. So let's see what Press TV says. Satellite images prove U.S. smuggling of Syrian oil. So says Russia. Russia citing satellite imagery says the United States has been smuggling Syrian oil to the other countries under the protection of its troops before and after the defeat of the Takfiri terrorist group in the region, ISIS. What just happened this morning or last night? Well, apparently the ISIS U.S. and the Kurds went into, was it Idlib? This was Russia's domain. And they went and killed this Baghdadi fellow. And apparently President Donald Trump has already made his announcement about it. He said they were going to do it at 9 o'clock this morning. Right? Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Major General Igor Konashenkov said on Saturday that the space intelligence images show that oil was actively extracted and massively exported for the processing outside of Syria under the reliable protection of U.S. troops before and after the defeat of ISIS terrorists. Konashenkov stressed that convoys were guarded by U.S. private military companies and special operation forces. Tank trucks guarded by U.S. military servicemen and private military companies smuggle oil from fields in eastern Syria to other countries in the event of any attack on such a convoy. U.S. Special Operations Forces combat aviation are immediately used to protect it. Now, he is saying, given that the cost of one barrel of oil smuggled from Syria is $38, the monthly revenue of that private business exceeds $30 million, Russia's TASS news agency quoted Konashenkov as saying. So now we know that Press TV got its information from TASS. All right? Now, is any of this true? And why? See, there's so much confusion going. See, I'll continue to read this. Revenues from smuggling Syrian oil arrived at numbered bank accounts of U.S. private military companies and intelligence services through brokerage firms that interact with it, Konashenkov said. To secure such a continuous financial flow free from control and taxes, the top officials at the Pentagon and Langley will be willing to guard and protect oil wells in Syria from imaginary hidden cells of ISIS indefinitely. Now that was posted yesterday, probably in the morning, and yesterday evening the Americans in response killed the leader of ISIS, Baghdadi. Why do you think that happened? You think this is a coincidence? One side exposes the other side, and the other side says, oh, it's time to take care of old so-and-so here to prove that that's not what's happening. I'm not going to say that the Russians are right or the Russians are wrong. But here's what I'm going to say. Russia, the United States, France, they're in there to loot and pillage. This is what's really going on. This is what's going on. And the Turks. I forgot the Turks. Let me point something out. Let me show you what happened with, Russia bombs ISIS trucks on way to Turkey. All right? This was back in 2015. Russia says it has proof Turkey involved in Islamic State oil trade. This is on Reuters, man. Russia's defense ministry said on Wednesday it had proof that Turkish President Erdogan and his family were benefiting from the illegal smuggling of oil from Islamic State-held territory in Syria and Iraq. Right? And this, why did Russia expose this? And why didn't they expose this before? Because Moscow and Ankara have been locked in a war of words since last week when a Turkish Air Force jet shot down a Russian warplane near the Syrian-Turkish border. That's the reason why they exposed this and then blew up some trucks that were by Turkish trucks that were, or either ISIS trucks, probably Turkish trucks that were buying oil from ISIS for the benefit of Erdogan and his family. And that is proven to be true. What I'm here to tell you is, folks, everybody who is in Syria, they are there to pillage and plunder. How do I know this? Well, in order for them to invade Israel, they have to go through Syria. And what does Ezekiel 38 say? They are there to take a spoil and to take a prey. That's the reason why they are there. Just as the love for money and the love of wealth, as Paul pointed out, is the root of every single kind of evil. Where did he get that from? He got it from Ezekiel 7. Just as an hour of doom came upon the people of Israel, so shall an hour of doom come upon the Gentiles. I have proven that over and over and again. And the Gentiles mocked the Jews for their love of money. But as you can plainly see by now, the Gentiles are plagued with that scourge, with that curse, the love of money, far more than the Jews could have ever imagined. And so, just as desolation came upon Israel, so will desolation come upon the Gentiles in the last days. Let me go to, I want to go, which, was it New International Version? Or was it New Living Translation? I'm not sure what it was. Oh, it was the Berean Bible, I believe it was. Berean Study Bible. All right. Verse 19, they will throw their silver into the streets, and their gold will seem unclean. Their silver and gold cannot save them in the day of the wrath of Jehovah that's coming. It already came on Israel, and now it's going to come upon the Gentiles. They will not be able to satisfy their appetites or fill their stomachs with wealth. Or as my uncle used to put on his bumper sticker back in the 70s, let them eat oil. For it became the stumbling block that brought their iniquity. I don't think I need to spell out any more, folks. I think you've got the gist of what I'm saying today. I think you now understand what is... Oh, hold on. I got to prove one more proof. How much oil does Syria have? Check this out, y'all. Look at this. Syria is the only significant crude oil producing country in the eastern Mediterranean region, which includes Jordan, Lebanon, Israel, and the Palestinian territories. According to the Oil and Gas Journal, Syria had 2.5 billion barrels of petroleum reserves as of January 2010. Folks, that's all you need to know. That's what's going on, folks. And the United States apparently, or Russia, is now accusing the United States using imagery to prove it, just like they did with Turkey, claiming that the Pentagon, the contractors, and others are putting money from this Syrian oil in Swiss bank accounts. And so if you go and read Hal Turner's commentary here, what you're going to see is, now he's always slanted one-sided. I say that there's more than one buzzard, there's more than one vulture. All right, where does he say this? Oh, yeah, here we go. He says, and now you know why so many high-level military people are screaming about President Trump ordering removal of U.S. troops from Syria. Well, guess what happened? They just did a turnabout yesterday. They're sending tanks and troops right back to the oil fields. What happened? See, there are things that are going on that we do not know, folks. So here's what Hal Turner says, and I'm telling you that there is more than one vulture here. So he says, as you know, so many high-level military people are screaming about President Trump ordering removal of U.S. troops from Syria. A whole slew of them are lining their pockets with profits from oil they helped steal. Maybe this is how Barack Obama got $14 million for his new mansion in Massachusetts. Okay. I pointed out what was going on with Turkish gold and certain members of the Trump administration. The news media had pointed out what was going on with Vice President Biden's son in Ukraine and China. You know, payoffs, protection money, all this other sort of kind of thing. What elected leaders are doing, folks, or what the leaders around the world, but elected leaders in the United States are doing too. Either they are personally profiting by ill-gotten or with ill-gotten means, or the people around them are doing this. We don't know how far it goes, but the pillaging and the plundering is ever present. Folks, you know as well as I do that they could have gotten Baghdadi a long time ago. Why they didn't get him until Press TV, TASS, and everybody else exposed this, why they waited just a few hours later after they were exposed by TASS news agency. If you think it's a coincidence, folks, I don't know where you've got your head. Now, I was told by a military friend of mine who's going to remain nameless for his own personal safety that in Afghanistan, U.S. troops were guarding opioid extraction factories in Afghanistan for the British. They go into these countries not to get rid of terrorists, they try to stay indefinitely in order to extract, or I should say pillage, and sometimes at the expense of their own citizens. I think it's like 64,000 people in the United States die a year from opioid overdoses, I think it is. So it's no wonder. It is absolutely no wonder when the Messiah comes, the nations are going to mourn. Or maybe it's the leaders of the nations. It's both. All right, let's see here. All the tribes of the earth will mourn. Matthew 20 and verse 30. And the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn that when they see the Son of Man coming in the cloud with power and great glory. Why? Well, you should know by now, it is because the pillaging and the plundering will come to an end, and they know it. So if you wonder what's going on in the Middle East right now, folks, there it is. Who is there? Gog and Magog.